Hi everyone, good morning. I hope you are able to hear me. Can
Yeah.
anyone please confirm?
Yeah, Bhaskar.
Yes,
Yeah,
Bhaskar.
thank you. Yeah, perfect. So in the last session, we created one pipeline which is used to move data from one place to other place. Okay, so let me open the pipeline and we'll talk about more in detail what we are going to discuss today. So let's go to the portal. Okay, so let me open the data factory. Our data factory is ADF Bhaskar 123. So creation of the data factory is one-time job. Let's launch your data factory studio. And let's go to the author. And we have a one pipeline that we created in the last session to move data from one place to other place. So to move that, we have used copy activity. We have used copy activity in order to move the data. Then let's talk about a little more details about copy data activity because we are going to use 100% data ingestion with only copy activity. You're just ingesting the data. So copy data activity, the name itself is saying we can copy data from one place to other place. We can copy from source to target. Your source may be anything. Your source may be ADLS or your source may be database. Your source may be anything. There are many sources available in the market. And surely your target will be mostly ADLS. Mostly 98% it will be. And there may be Snowflake also as a target. It all depends on the situations. But in my experience, I came across ADLS as a target most of the times. So we can copy data from source to target by using copy activity. Let's say your source is a file system, how this copy activity is going to work. Or if your source is a database, then how it is going to work. That we are going to see here. So we can copy the data from file system and we can copy the data from the database as well. And copy data activity, if you remember, yesterday we set the data set for source and we set the data set for sync. So let me show that options where exactly we came across it as part of this. When you select this copy activity, you can see here there is a source. We have to specify the source data set and we have to specify the sync data set. So sync is nothing but target. We have to specify the target data set here. So we know already how we can create a data sets. In the last session we have seen, but we are going to see again and again. When you read the data from the file system, what options are available, that I wanted to take you through here. The file system, when I say file system, your source may be ADLS. Okay, so that is a cloud. Or you may have an on-prem file system also. As part of the project, we are going to see how we can use the on-prem file system. Just for knowledge, I'm going to take you through. But in general, you're going to have a files in the SFTP in place of your local file system. Okay, so just for understanding, I'm going to take you through. As part of the project, I'll show you how we can read from a file. I mean on-prem file system. 99% we never use on-prem file system. We are always going to use SFTP. Okay, so the way you're going to use the SFTP in the same way you have to use for a file system also. I'll take you through that. In this particular situation, if your source is ADLS, then how you're going to handle it, that I'm going to take you through. So when the source is a file system, then we have a three different options to make sure. One is file path in the dataset. So the path of the file is going to be there in the data set. So that is what the file path in the data set. And there is a one more option, that is wildcard file path. When we are going to use this wildcard file path, we are going to see, and the list of the files, what is the purpose of this list of the files also, we are going to see with the use cases. And three options are there when you read the data from the file system. And three options are there when you read the data from the database. The database may be anything. I mean to say, the database may be Oracle, or the database may be SQL Server, or DB2, or Snowflake, anything it is. We are going to have these three options. Out of these three, very, very, very important is query. Because if you go with the table, for every table, you need to have a data set. That's not the best practice. If I have 100 tables, creating 100 data sets are not recommended. For all 100 tables, one data set has to serve. So if that is the case, then you have to go for the query. So once we come across this database, then you can understand it. And we have an option to use the stored procedure also. We have an option to use the stored procedure as well. But using the stored procedure, there is a very, very less chances to use it. In my experience, I came across only one time to take the data from the source, and we are not having direct access to the tables to read it for some reason, and they have given access to the stored procedure. I used to bring the data from there by executing the stored procedure. But it is very, very limited chances. So you can ignore the first and second last option, but everyone should be aware of this query. So how can we make that query, and how we can use that query to make it comfort, or to make it work with other tables? So how we can make it, we'll see that later. Okay, so these two options will be there. We can read the data from the file system, and you can read the data from the database. And if you wanted to read the data from the files, how we can read it, that we are going to see. For single file, we have seen in the last session. For single file, we have seen. But if the requirement demands for multiple tables, then how you're going to handle it? So that is what I'm having here. Create a pipeline to move or copy from multiple files. Okay, so data from multiple files, from input directory to output directory. Same input, I'm just going to take the same account, and I'm just going to have an input directory and output directory here. So that is only is going to be differential. Your account is same. Your target account and source account is same, but I'm having different folders. So from one folder to other folder, I wanted to do it. So here my source is cloud source. Azure Data Store is your source. If that is the case, then you can use Azure Integration Runtime to connect and bring the data. And my target is also Azure, so you can use the same Azure Integration Runtime to connect and load the data. Okay, so one integration runtime is enough because my source is same. I mean, the platform of my source and the platform of my target is Azure. So because of that reason, I can use only one Azure integration runtime, that is Azure Integration Runtime.
Bhaskar, one doubt here.
Yeah.
Yeah, here the source and target is same, right? I mean the storage is same, so that we are using the same Azure IR. Then also we did the copy yesterday. I mean the clone yesterday, the data set. If in case the target is different, we cannot go for the clone, right? We have to create the new data set. Am I right or wrong?
No, if account is different, we can clone still, we can change it. Only the clone, I recommend you to clone based on the format of the file. Let's say
Okay.
if you have a CSV file, you can clone any data set. And
Okay.
later you can change the link service. Later you
Uh,
can change the location of the data set.
there it's yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Now let me go and do this one. I have a multiple files now. Employee.csv, customer.csv, the multiple extensions also I'm having. So I wanted to bring them as it is. The same extension I wanted to bring into the target also. Okay, so if it is a single file, then it is fine. That is what we have done in the last session. Now this time I wanted to do for multiple files. So if you want to do the multiple files, the similar kind of approach you're going to do with the slight change in that. Okay, so let me create a data set. There are multiple files are there. So when you have a multiple files, I wanted to create a data set to point to input folder. First, set up the source and then we'll talk about it. Let's go to the storage account. Yesterday we created storage account, right? The same storage account I'm going to use. Let's go to the data storage containers. Let's go inside the data files. I'm just taking out my output folder from here. I wanted to keep only input. And let's take out all these files from here also. No data is available in the input directory. I'm just setting up my input or my source as per requirement. So I need an employee.csv file and customer.csv file. Let's upload them. Customer.csv file, employee.csv file, then department.json. Department.json, employee1.txt and 2.txt, employee 1 and 2, upload them. So I just uploaded the files as per this requirement. Now I wanted to move this file from input directory to output directory. Let me duplicate this page. I do not have a output directory here. My first tab is pointing to the input directory. In the second tab, I don't have a output still because you have to create an output. So you means data factory need to create it. Data factory need to create a directory. So where is your files? My files are available inside this directory. Okay. My all files are available. All files are available inside the input directory. So if you want to pull all these files from one place to other place without any condition, I wanted to dump all of them. If you want to dump all of them, then you have to create a data set to point to data files. You have to create a data set. The data set should point to the data files. Basically, you have to use, there is a file path in data set we have. So in the yesterday session, by default, it is going to have a file path in a data set. And there is a one more option, that is a wildcard file path. Wildcard file path. So if you wanted to use this wildcard file path, you have to create a data set by pointing to data files. Okay, so later you can specify whatever the directories that you wanted to have it. You can create a data set by pointing to the data files or by pointing to the input. Either one of the way you can create it. So let me create a data set by pointing to the folder. To create a data set, you have to go to the data set. We don't need to create a link service because I'm using the same storage account. One link service for one storage account. And let's go here, new data set. What is your data set? It is related to Azure. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. You have to take this, hit continue. And I'm just going to take a CSV file for time being. Okay, so there will be an interview question. How can you handle the rest of the files? Like if you have a JSON file, will it come into the JSON file? So 100% it will come. I'll show you practically, then you can understand. Okay, so let me go and take a CSV file and hit on continue. ds underscore data files. So I wanted to create a data set by pointing to the container. And I'm just going to take the link service. and I wanted to keep the up to data files only. Do not take other than that. Just leave rest of them. And if you want to make your JSON files also to work, you have to specify, uncheck this. You are not supposed to take the first row as a header. If you take this option, then it is going to be failed. Okay, so they will ask in the interview, you have a different extensions. I wanted to move the files. How can you do it? So this is one of the option. Wildcard file path is one of the option. But if the person is not aware of it, if the person is not aware of how we can handle it, then definitely he feels that it is going to be failed. Of course, it is going to be failed if you check the checkbox. And even if you give the correct answer, they feel that is wrong answer. We have a different approach we'll see in the future sessions. So they will expect that approach, not this approach, but I wanted to take you through this as well. And let's go for none. Import schema is none and hit OK. Now your data set is none. Your data set is pointing to up to where? It is pointing to the root directory, that is data files. Now, I wanted to copy a file from one place to other place. Can you please keep in mute if you're not talking, please? And I wanted to create a one more data set also, because you have to keep them inside the output directory. To keep them inside the output directory, then you have to create a one more data set. I can go and create a new data set. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Hit on continue. I'm just taking same delimited only. Let's continue it. Now I'm going to give the data set name is ds underscore data files underscore output. So I wanted to refer up to output directory. Let's take this link service. I can also browse or I can also enter. If you are sure about the naming standard, and if you feel entering the value is less time, is taking less time, then you can enter the values or you can go for browse. So data files I'm having here, I'm just going to have a output. I don't want to give a first row as a header. Just say none. Import schema is none. We don't need to specify first row as a header because we are not having only CSV files. If I have only comma separator files or tab separator files, then you can say my first row is having a header. So since I'm having other files, JSON files, then I don't want to specify that. Let's hit OK. Now your source data set is ready and target data set is ready. Whenever you wanted to move the files from one place to other place, you have to make sure there is a source data set and there is a target data set. Okay, any question as of now?
Yes, yes, Bhaskar.
Yeah, please.
Bhaskar, we in the output data set, you directly mentioned the data files and output as a directory.
Yes.
So suppose by mistake, if I wrote only the data files by
Some typos.
by keyboard, yeah,
Okay.
and by mistake I wrote some other name for the container. So would it going to create another container also, just like it is creating another directory in the container?
I did not check that one, but we'll check that. Okay, so mostly I don't think it is going to create if it is a container, but sure, if it is a folder, definitely it is going to create. We'll check if you want. Okay. Just one time run. We'll check that.
Sure. Thank you.
In source data set, why you not create the input folder?
I'll show you. You can understand. Now your source data set is ready. You can create it, but there is no use. Okay. And output data set is also ready. Let's create a pipeline, a new pipeline. The name of the pipeline, I'm taking PL, move multiple files from source to target. So we are going to take the same copy data activity only. Just observe, source data set is required. The source data set is what? This one, data files I'm taking. Okay, so file path data set, if I'm taking a single file, then you can go for file path in data set. If it is multiple files, then you have to go for wildcard file path. When the moment I choose the wildcard file path, what happens is it is going to point to root directory only, always. Even if we keep the input also in the data set, it is going to point to the root directory. Then it will ask you to enter the wildcard file path and file. So here my files are available inside the input. I'm just going to enter input here. Even if your source data set is pointing to the input, you have to insert, you have to enter the input. So because of that reason, I created a data set by pointing to the data files only. Okay, you got my point, right? Why I created. Now let me say here input, because my files are there inside the input. I wanted to take all the files. If you want to take all the files, then you can just keep the star. Star indicates everything. Okay, so if I wanted to take only CSV files, then you can just say .csv. Or if you wanted to have a starting with some prefix and star, then you can also do that. You can play around it. Now I'm just going to leave it as it is with star since I need all the files. And let's take a target data set, that is data files _ output. So here I'm not specifying anything because everything is dumping into the output folder. And if I wanted to test it, then we need to run it. Before running, we just observe in the output. I mean, in the second tab, I don't have an output directory itself. Let's run it. Now, if you go and see your target, oh my God, where it is created. Files read 1, files written is 1. Output itself is not created. Let me go for output data set.
You just did the debug, right, Bhaskar? You haven't,
Yeah, that is correct only.
Even for the debug, it would create. Okay.
Output is there. I think I'm looking in a different location. Let me go again, storage accounts. This is the storage account. Containers. I uploaded in a wrong place. Okay, I'm bad. Let's remove them. I took a wrong place to upload. So let me re-upload the files.
Did you use
Customer.csv.
other storage
Yeah,
account?
other storage account I used. And department.json. Employee 1, 2. Let's upload it. Now let me run this. Okay, so I don't have output directory here. I have an input directory. I'm able to see all the files. Not this one.
But the link service is connected to the correct.
Yes, link service is connected to correct one only. Now this is the input. So I don't have anything in the output. Let me run again. Your pipeline is correct only. Let's debug it. So debug means you're executing your pipeline.
And what is validate?
Validate, like if you have any issues in the pipeline, it is going to highlight it.
Okay.
the code validation only.
It's just like cross-checking whether
Yes,
it is
yes.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
We will
Now it
use
is done.
before debug validate.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying. So now you can see here files read is 5. Files written is 5. Now if you refresh this, you can find the output directory. Inside the output, I have all the files. Just cross verify by opening these files. I'm able to see the data with the header. And let's open this JSON file. So JSON file syntax also is available. Okay, so as it is taking the data. Okay, so this is one of the approach to do it. Okay, I'm just publishing
Sir,
for
do we
time
need
being.
to?
Yeah.
Sir, one doubt, sir.
Yeah,
Do
please.
we need to save this one, sir, after creating this pipeline and running the pipeline?
Yeah, for time being, if you want to save this, whatever you've done, you have to publish it. Okay, so I'm just publishing it for time being, but there is a one more thing that we need to know, that is repository. So code repository we have to use, because if you want to publish it, you should not have any errors in the pipelines. Then only you can publish it.
Yes. Yesterday I tried, sir. It asked me to live environment something. It asked,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, in the live, because okay. So did you try to configure the Git?
No, sir. That's why I closed it,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, so if you want to publish this, if you want to save them in the data factory, make sure there should not be error in the items. I mean to say there should not be error in the data set. There should not be error in the data flow or pipelines, or simply. So we should not face any errors. If you have errors, then you cannot publish it. Okay, so when the time comes, I'm going to talk about it. We do not save the code directly in the data factory. We are going to have a code repository. Okay, so I'll talk about it in the next week, how we can configure code repository to save the code. Okay.
So until then, where we need to? It will be
Save,
stated.
you can save directly in the data factory itself. No worries. You can save it. Do not
Can you
delete the
show?
data factory.
Can you show one, sir, where to save?
Simple, just publish only. Publish is nothing but you're saving in the data factory.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, so that is what it is. To work this save, you need to have a repository.
In the future, could you tell me the CI/CD, sir?
We are going to talk.
Okay.
See, okay, so you have a data factory here, right? This is a ADF. Okay, so you are doing some development. In the data factory only you are doing, but you cannot see in the live. That code will never come. The code will never come here until unless you publish it. But to publish here, there should not be an error. No errors in the pipelines. In that case only, you can publish into the data factory. Then your code will be there in the data factory. But everything we cannot publish it, right? Without validation, without testing with testing team, without sign off, you cannot bring the code into the live mode. Okay, so for that reason, we are going to have a code repository. You're going to have a code repository. Once you've done the development, you're going to keep the code in the repo. Okay, so once you've done your unit testing, once you feel that is fine, then you can move this code into the, this is a dev data factory, and we are going to have a one more data factory, that is testing data factory. So you have to move this code into this place. You have to publish the code from the code repository to another data factory. But code is there here only. All the code will sitting here, and you have to publish the code into the testing repository. So testing team will access this. Of course, they don't run the pipeline. We are going to run. They're just going to validate it. Okay, and once they signed off, then it will go to the UAT. And once UAT also is signed up, then we are going to bring this code into the prod data factory. So prod also you're going to have a data factory. In order to do all these things, you have to do CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration and continuous development. Continuous integration and continuous deployment. Okay, so how exactly we can do it? We are going to see that. CI/CD pipeline, basically DevOps team will take care about it. But I'm going to take you through how we can do it, because in the interviews, they will ask 100%. Even it is not your role. You got my point, right? But code will be saved in the repository. From the repository, it will go into the different data factories. So I do not go directly right away. You need to wait for some time to come across all this stuff. Clear?
Clear, sir.
And next use case I'm having, I've given the solution here. When you read the data from multiple files as it is without changing file names, then we can use wildcard file path. And when you use wildcard file path, make sure to create a data set by pointing to the root directory, data files, or to any specific directory also you can create it, but it will point to root directory only. Now my requirement is different. If I need a CSV files, you can directly use the wildcard file path and you can say start.csv. You can try with that. Only these things will be for interview point of view only. Okay, so originally I don't go, or I do not recommend to go with this approach. Okay, so this is one thing. Another thing is, let's say I have many files in the data source. Okay, so I ran first time and I loaded the data for specific files. Okay, so let's say I have 100 files in the source and 98 files are loaded. And for some reason, 2 files were not loaded. Just imagine, you just think like that. If I wanted to read again, if I wanted to run my job again, it has to read all the 100 files again. So I don't want to do that. I wanted to load a specific files. I know what files are not loaded, so I wanted to load those 2 files. That is one kind of use case. And other use cases, I have many files in the source. I don't want to load all of them. I wanted to load only specific files for some reason. Then how you are going to handle it? How can you handle it? So if that is the case, then we have to use list of files. There is one more option while using the copy activity. I told you one is data set in file path in data set is one option. Second is wildcard file path. And the third is list of files. You can specify what files you wanted to load it. You can specify what files you wanted to load it. The same input I'm taking, but my output is I wanted to load only customer.csv and department.json files. So if that is the case, then how you're going to handle it? Okay, so if you want to use the list of the files, then you have to create a data set by pointing to the input directory. Okay, because my files are there within the input. So what I can do is I can clone this data set, right? I can clone this output data set. Or even I can clone this data files also. Data files also I can clone it. You can clone it. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to say input. Up to input, I'm going to create a data set. So it's not just name of the data set. It's about the path of the data set. The file path up to input. You have to do these changes. Right? When you're creating a data set by pointing to the input, then your data set should point to the input. I'm not giving the file name here. I'm just giving a data set up to input. So here inside this input, I'm going to have a list of files. I'm going to create one file which is having the list of files. So your source data set is ready. And target data set is also ready. I can reuse the existing data set. I don't need to recreate it. If you create too many data sets, then there will be too many data sets. You cannot go for run and maintenance. It will be difficult. So my source data set is ready and target data set is ready. And in the source, I wanted to upload a file called upload. So there is a list of files. Just upload that file. I'll show you what file names are there inside this file. Let's open it and see here. Customer.csv file and department.json files I kept it. As per my requirement, I kept the name of the files in the list of files. It's a one file. Whatever the files I wanted to load, that file names and extension I can specify in this particular file. Let's close this and go to your pipeline and create a pipeline. The pipeline is PL underscore move a specific files. And same activity, I'm going to use it. Copy data activity. Let's go to the source data set. And your source data set is data files input is your source data set. We have seen these first two options. Now I'm going to take list of files. When I'm taking this list of files, it is asking to browse the file name. Let's browse it. Data files. It is taking a long time. Let me revert it and try to do it again. Yeah, input. Inside input. That. Why it is taking time.
Again, cancel.
Yeah. Yeah, list of files. Let's take it. Now it is pointing to the files, right? So my data is available inside the input. For that reason, you have to create a data set and path file list is available inside this place. And let's go to source, target. The target is same output directory. Before running this, I wanted to remove my all files in the output directory because we need to do testing, right? So for testing, I'm just removing all of them from here. And let's re-debug it. I mean, you're running your pipeline. The changes are not saved in the data factory. Changes are there in the, out of the live mode. We don't need to publish the changes to run the pipeline. Whatever the changes are available here, that will be taken to run it. Now it is succeeded. Go and check your output. Now we have only two files, customer.csv file, I can see, and department.json, I can see. Okay, so we have seen how we can use this copy activity to copy files from source to target. We have seen how we can do it for single table and multiple tables and specific files if you wanted to do it. Any question as of now before going to the next task? Okay, so once the changes are published, then you can close these tabs so that you do not get confusion.
So it always requires a file which contains all the file names.
Yes, if this is the case, if you need a specific files. So that is one approach. And I'll tell you one more thing. Let's say you're reading the files from the source. Okay. And I wanted to load only the latest files. If the file is already loaded, then I don't want to load it. Okay, so how can you do it? We'll talk about this. Okay. Let's say, for example.
And Bhaskar, that wildcard search is like a like operator in
Exactly.
SQL.
Exactly. Like operator in SQL. Okay, you got my point, right? But basically, we don't come across that. In my experience, I did not come across to use this wildcard file path. But if at all, if you required, then you can come across it. Okay, so now in this particular use case, I wanted to read data from the data source if the file is current to day file. Let's say I have a SFTP path. In SFTP, they're keeping the files by adding a date to the file. So they're giving a suffix as a date, like in the same format, customer underscore date they're giving. You just imagine they're giving a current to day files and they're keeping all the files in one place. Okay, so if at all, if I need to take only current to day files from the source, then how you're going to handle it? So here my intention is, if they basically they don't keep all the files continuously, I mean every day that they don't keep it, we're going to move the files from out of there. So I mean to say, once we read the file, we're going to archive the files into the archive directory. So always we are going to have a current to day files in general. Okay, for interview point of view, there is a chances to ask this kind of questions. I wanted to read the data from the data source if it is current to day file. So again, there will be multiple questions you can face it. Like current to day file means on what basis you can say it is a current to day file. So they generated the file and they kept the file in the source with their date. Do we need to treat that particular file as a current today or system date as a current today? So what we need to consider? So depends on the requirement we are going to consider based on their date from the file, or you may go and consider your system date also. System date means your storage date will be there, right? Let's say, for example,
Modified date.
yeah, exactly. Modified date will be there here. So which one we need to consider? That we need to take a confirmation, then we can do it. If I wanted to do this, then you have to go for different approach. Okay, we'll see that how we can handle that kind of situation. And now if a file itself is having a date, then how we can handle it, that I wanted to take it. So here my main intention to talk about one more new activity that I'm going to introduce. First thing is, the file names comes from the source. I don't have any problem. But how can you check this date is available? So somewhere from the data factory, you have to get this date saying that, let's say, for example, today is 03/19/2025. So this date you need to define from the data factory. You have to define from the data factory. Then you have to check this file available inside this, or you need to frame the file name accordingly. So the file customer prefix is same. This is fixed value. So you can take this as it is fixed and you can concatenate with the date. So how we can frame the file name? If I wanted to frame the file name, or if I wanted to define the file name something dynamically, because date is not fixed. This value, this customer is fixed for time being, just imagine. And date is 100%, we are sure about it, it is not fixed. If I take the tomorrow, then date will be 20. So we need to take this date dynamically. So whatever you're going to take something dynamically, then mostly I recommend to use variable. You have to define the variable. Okay, so variable, we are going to come across even Python also, or we can come across with the Databricks. Databricks or PySpark, both are same. How we can use the variable concept as part of this, we are going to come across it. But the intention of this variable is if you wanted to get the value dynamically at the time of execution, or while executing the pipeline, if you wanted to set some value to the variable, then we have to define the variable to set a value to the variable. To set a value to the variable, we have an activity called variable activity. Set variable activity. Without set variable activity, you cannot do this. With only copy data, you cannot do it. Okay, so if you want to do it, I can do it. There is a possibility. But I always recommend go with the set variable activity, because you can see the value of the variable. If you're not in a position to see the value of the variable, then how do you know what value it is getting? So if you directly do with copy data, if it is a small expression, that's fine. If you have a large expression, then you cannot do it. So that kind of situations we are going to come across it. Let's say my pipeline is having multiple activities. An example I'm taking, my pipeline is having multiple activities. Okay, so multiple activities are there that may be connected something like this. How do I know which activity is failed? If it is failed, this may be failed, this may be failed, this may be failed. So if you wanted to capture those details, we need a variable. So variable activity is required to get the value to this variable. So whenever you're doing something dynamic, set variable activity is very, very important. Set variable activity, we are going to use it. So we are going to create a variable at the pipeline level only. We cannot create a variable other than the pipeline level. Okay, so we are going to create at a pipeline level. That is one difference, because there is a chances to ask what are the differences between variables and parameters. I'll talk about the parameters later. Let's go with the variables now. So variables will be created at the pipeline level. Let me create a variable. Not in this particular place. Let me create a different pipeline. A new pipeline underscore load data from current day file. So I wanted to take the current today. First, get the file name, the way you're having in the source. In the similar way, I wanted to get the name of the file. Let's create a variable plus new. Now variable name, I'm taking v underscore file name. So when you create a variable, what data types are available? You can just have a look on it. I can create a string variable, a bool data type variable, array, collection of items. If you have integer data type, we have only these data types only, because we are not dealing with the data. We're not dealing with the actual data to have a float data type, right? So we are just dealing the metadata. So I'm just going to leave it as it is string, because my file name is a string. And default value, let's leave it default without any value. I wanted to set the value for this. To set a value for this, we are going to use the activity called set variable activity. The purpose of this set variable activity to set a value to the variable. As simple as that. Okay, so we are going to use extensively this particular activity throughout your working experience, or even in our sessions also. Many places I'm going to use this set variable activity. It's very, very, very important. If you want to write some expression, if you want to see the result, at least even at the time of debugging or at the time of development, we are going to use this variable activity frequently, because we do not have the feasibility to see the output of the expression directly in the data factory. That is one limitation I feel. If you go for Python, okay, so somewhere I have opened. Just give me a minute, I'll show you. Like if you take a Python, if I declare some variable here, I can see what is there inside the variable. Okay, so let's say name equals to Bhaskar. If I wanted to print the name, I can see by using the print, I can see the result here. I have a feasibility. But when it comes to here in the data factory, if you write some expression, if you want to see the result, you do not have this kind of env. We do not have this kind of environment. So that is one of the limitations that I feel when I work with the data factory. But still, Microsoft is giving an alternative way to do it. Okay, so if you can use the set variable, then you can see the output of it. Now let me show you. I'm going to set the value for that variable. Variable is created at the pipeline level, and I wanted to set the value for that variable. I just drag and drop the set variable activity, and you can see here there is a settings. So inside settings, we have a option to set the value. There are two different things. I can set a value directly within the pipeline, or I can get the value from another pipeline. I have a pipeline 1 and pipeline 2. I declare the variable in the pipeline 2. And if you want to take the value from the pipeline 1 to pipeline 2, you can take it with the help of pipeline return value. Let's go with this option. Okay, so when time comes, I'll show you how we can use or how we can take the value from one pipeline to another pipeline. And let's see here, the name of the variable I have selected. And here we need to write the expression. We have to write the expression. So by writing the expression, then only we can get it. Right? Let me say, if you want to write the expression dynamically, we are going to use add dynamic content. At the data ingestion level, we are going to say the dynamic expression is nothing but the dynamic content. Hit on add dynamic content. In order to write the expressions, we can call this as a pipeline expression builder. To write the expression, we can use the functions. So data factory has its functions. We can use the variables. And we can use the parameters to write the expressions. We can use the activity outputs, because you'll be having multiple activities, something like this. If I wanted to take any activity output, I can take it, any of the activity output to write an expression. So I'm just giving a possibilities. I can also use the system variables. All together you can use to write the expression. Okay, so in this particular situation, your customer is fixed value. Customer is a fixed value. Okay, so I'm just taking here directly a value. Before that, I wanted to get the date. To get the date, you can go to the functions. There are various functions, various categories of the functions I'm having. Like collection functions are available, conversion functions, date functions, logical functions, mathematical functions, and string functions. I wanted to get the current date. To get the current date, when the moment to feel I need a date, just go through this. Then you can have a list of functions. And other option is you can hit on this expressions comma functions, then it is going to show the list of functions which are used as part of the data factory and Azure Synapse Analytics. So in the future, they're going to rename this as a Microsoft Fabric. Okay, so whatever you use in the data factory, the same thing that we can use in the Microsoft Fabric, the same thing that we can use in the Azure Synapse also. So here I'm saying expressions. Just come little down, you can find a list of functions. You can see the date functions. I wanted to get the current date and time. There is a function called UTC now. Okay, so in SQL Server, if you're aware of SQL, there is a function called getDate. So getDate will be used to get the current date and time. The same thing, if you're aware of Power BI, there is a function called now. Okay, so I think in Oracle, sysdate or something is there, I'm not sure, subject to correction. There is a sysdate to get the current date and time. So every tool or every language, everything has their own approach to get the current date and time. So here they have a function called UTC now function to get the UTC time standard. If you want to convert into IST, we can convert it. It's a different story. We'll see as part of the project. Now I'm just going to take the UTC time standard. let's see how I'm going to get the UTC now. UTC now. You just hit OK. Now you just debug it. I'll write the expression and I'll wind up the session. Just observe. Whenever you run the pipeline, you should be habituated what is the input of this activity and what is the output of the activity. So this we can call the input and this we can call the output. You have to see what is input and what is output. So then only can do proper debugging. If there is some issue, how do you know? How can you identify what issue it is getting? So then you have to go into each and every activity. Now here my input is variable name. My input is the function name. What is the output of your activity? My output of the oh my God, I'm bad. Basically, when you write an expression, the expression is always going to be starting with the at symbol. So then only it will be treated as a expression. Otherwise, that will be treated as a text. So because of that reason, you're having the same function name. Let's go here and change it. This should start with the at. Let's hit OK. The starting always with the at symbol. If you go and see the output, what it is available here, date is available. But I'm not looking in this format. I'm looking in the MMDDYY format. Then how you're going to get is just go here. You have to format this date. So to format this date, we have a function called format date from function. If you see in the date time function, you can find format date time function here. You can also see the example with some like some places they're going to give a format approach. And if you're not sure about it, you can check from here. Format date time function you can find here. So timestamp you can specify and format you can specify. Okay, so there are many format strings are there. You can just go and custom format patterns. Okay, so different patterns we're having it. Okay, so whenever you're going to write an expression, I always recommend you to use a Notepad. Notepad++. Okay, so this will help us to write or make you understand very flexible to write the long or complex expressions. Now we know about UTC now. At UTC now is giving the current date and time. Now I wanted to format it. To format it, you have to use the function called format date time. This is asking here you have to pass the date. You have to pass the date and you have to pass the format here. So what is the purpose of it? It is used to format the date and time. So you can format it. In the same syntax, I need to write the expression format date time. Inside the format date time, you have to pass what? You have to pass the date. So date you are getting, to get the current date and time, I'm just going to take the same thing, UTC now. Just copy and paste it here. Comma, then format. What is the format? I wanted to take format in, I hope single quote. I always used to forget because in Python, you'll be having double quote, single quote. Here, I'm sure there will be single quote. Let's say MMDDYYY format. So how do I know this format? I know about this, so I'm just taking it. If you're not aware of it, then you have to go for single format specifier or custom format options. You have to spend some time to identify the literals. Now, if I take this expression, you can see the closing braces. Okay, it will be highlighted so that you can avoid the misclosing options. Now, this expression should start with only starting expression with at. Okay, so here only you need to have it. Here only you have to have it. We should not have it at here. You have to take out it. Now take this entire expression and copy and paste it in the expression builder. You can write the expression here, but I always go with the Notepad++ for better usage. Let's hit OK and run it again. Now, if you see the output of this file, again, see here, it's not a capital Y, it is lowercase yy. Let's take again. Now paste it and debug it. And see here, 03, 19, 20, 25. And this should be concatenated with the customer. So customer is a hard coded. I mean to say it's a fixed value. Okay, so customer underscore is fixed. This is one text part. The result of this function is getting 03, 19, 20, 25. The value, this one is a text value only. Here it is a text value only. Okay, this text value we need to concatenate it. We need to concatenate it. So if you want to concatenate two text values, then we are going to use, just give me a minute. I'm just going to take max 3 minutes. So by 3 minutes, I'm going to wind up. Yeah. So I'm just trying to take my pen. So it was not allowing. So here I have it. This is the text 1. And this is the text 2. Okay, so I wanted to combine these two texts. So wherever you go, either it is in a SQL or Databricks or in the data factory, we have a function called concat function. This concat is used to concatenate multiple texts. Concatenate will be used to combine multiple text values. Okay, so how exactly you're going to do it, that I'm just going to take you through here. Let's say I'm just writing a function name concat. So here you can have a text 1, comma text 2. So when I come across one function, you should be ready to adapt at least one new function on top of it. So if you can adapt functions, then you can do many things. So the reason why I'm spending a function some time here is because in the Databricks, we are going to write a coding. You can easily understand. If you understand the context, you can easily do it. So concat is used to combine multiple text values. So it is used to combine multiple text values. Now I'm taking the same syntax. It is going to start with the at when you write the expression concat, bracket open and bracket close. Inside this, I have a two text values. One is this one, just bring that. So this should be in a single quote. So I'm just going to say customer underscore, comma. So this is the first text part. And then the second part is the date. So this date you are getting because of this expression. Take a copy and paste it here. Okay, so now we should not have a at symbol for inside. Inside this, we should take out it. Only we have to keep outside only. So starting of the expression only, we need to have a at symbol. Rest of them, we are not supposed to have it. So I'm just going to take out them. Let's take out it. Take this entire expression and execute it here. Let's execute it and see the result. Now, if you see the output here, it is coming customer underscore date. But what about the extension? I'm having extension is .csv. So .csv is a fixed value. So since it is a fixed value, I can take that as a text3, that is .txt. In single quote, .txt. So that is how we are going to write. Sorry, not txt, it is csv. Now let's debug it. You can see the current day file name. If you have a multiple file names, it's a different story. You just think about it. There is only one pattern with customer. So because of that reason, I'm taking customer static value. So otherwise you have to go for dynamic. Okay, so slowly I'm going to take you through how we can write the dynamic expressions. So for time being, I'm just writing up to here. Yeah, we already done it. Let me publish this. So tomorrow I'm going to give this file name to the copy activity to copy a file. Okay, so how we can give the output, one activity output to another activity, we are going to see in the next session, and how we can use this variable, whatever the value is there inside the variable, that I have to give it to copy activity, and the data set, we need to make a dynamic data set. So till now, we have created a data set. The data set is pointing to the folder, or the data set is pointing to the file name. If you see here, the input data set, input customer, it is pointing to the file name. So I don't want to point to the file name. This is a static. This is a bad practice. So while starting off your practice, while learning, you can do it. But basically, we are going to make this dynamic. So how we are going to make the dynamic data sets, that we are going to see on tomorrow's session. So I'm stopping here. If you have any question, you can ask me. Okay, so I said the payment details, guys. So just make sure, and once the payment is done, please share your Gmail account. I'll share all this stuff. Okay. Okay, then I'm stopping here. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining.
Sir, how to set the
I'll connect it. I'll connect with you. Thank you.